Imagine a world where science, secrecy, and power collide behind locked doors. Governments pushing the boundaries of possibility, conducting classified experiments in pursuit of the ultimate weapon, unstoppable soldiers, or mind control tech. But what happens when these experiments spiral out of control? What if the very people trying to save the world nearly destroyed it instead? Today, we're diving into the top 10 military experiments that went horribly, catastrophically wrong. You won't believe what you're about to hear. Starting off with psychic spies and secret visions at number 10, a chilling venture known as Project Stargate. No, not the sci-fi show, this was very real. During the Cold War, the US Army and CIA funded psychic spying programs to compete with alleged Soviet psychic warfare. They recruited people claiming to have extrasensory perception, training them to perform remote viewing, which is basically seeing places or events from a distance, using only the mind. For over 2 decades, they tried to gather intelligence by psychic means. At first, results were promising. Some viewers claimed to locate hidden missile bases or downed aircraft. But over time, it all started to unravel. Accuracy plummeted, the data became useless, and decision-makers started relying on unverifiable visions. Billions were funneled into what essentially became an elaborate wild goose chase. In the end, the government shut the whole thing down, admitting it had no actual intelligence value. But the most disturbing part? Some insiders still insist it worked and was buried, not because it failed, but because it worked too well. Now let's talk about the ocean turning into a war zone. Sliding in at number 9. Let's talk about the Navy's infamous sonar experiments. Underwater sonar testing has long been a military staple, but in the 1990s and 2000s, the US Navy started using low-frequency active sonar in training drills around the world. These sonic pulses, powerful enough to travel hundreds of miles through the ocean, had a terrifying unintended consequence. Whales and dolphins began washing ashore, bleeding from their ears and brains. Entire pods stranded themselves in acts of apparent panic. In the Bahamas, one such drill coincided with 17 beaked whales beaching and dying in a single day. Marine biologists linked it directly to sonar. Lawsuits followed. The Navy initially denied responsibility, but later studies confirmed what scientists feared: the noise was disorienting and sometimes deadly. They'd created a weaponized ocean, turning peaceful seas into zones of silent slaughter. How about spraying bacteria over an entire city? Coming in hot at number 8, we've got Operation Sea Spray. Picture this. In 1950, the US military secretly released a cloud of bacteria over San Francisco, aiming to simulate a biological attack on an unsuspecting city. The goal was to test how a pathogen would spread in an urban environment. Over 6 days, massive amounts of Serratia marcescens, a bacteria thought to be harmless at the time, were sprayed into the air using naval ships stationed near the Golden Gate Bridge. Soon after, a spike in rare urinary tract infections hit local hospitals. One man died, and his family believed the bacteria killed him. The experiment remained secret for decades. When it finally came to light, people were outraged. Citizens had been used as guinea pigs without their knowledge or consent. Lawsuits followed, but the government denied responsibility. The chilling truth? Sea spray wasn't the only time. Similar tests were carried out in cities across America, hidden in plain sight. Now it gets real dark with government LSD trips at number 7. Things get darker with Project MKUltra. If you've heard whispers of mind control, CIA brainwashing, or LSD experiments, this is where it all begins. Launched in the 1950s, MKUltra was the CIA's top-secret quest to develop techniques for controlling the human mind. They dosed unwitting citizens, soldiers, and prisoners with LSD and other hallucinogens, just to see what would happen. In some cases, subjects were kept drugged for days or weeks without knowing why. One man, Frank Olson, a biochemist for the Army, allegedly committed suicide after being dosed without his knowledge. His family believes he was murdered to keep secrets buried. When the project was exposed in the 1970s, it sent shockwaves through Congress. Over 150 sub-projects, tens of thousands of documents, and decades of abuse, and still, many details remain classified. We may never know the full extent. MKUltra wasn't just a failure. It shattered public trust in the very institutions meant to protect us. Now imagine being kept awake until you go insane at number 6. The Soviets enter the scene with a horrifying rumor-turned research known as the Russian sleep experiment. Now, while parts of this story have been exaggerated into creepypasta legend, there's a kernel of disturbing truth behind it. During the Cold War, Soviet scientists allegedly tested sleep deprivation on prisoners, locking them in sealed chambers with experimental gas designed to keep them awake indefinitely. After several days, the subjects became paranoid, violent, and unstable. Reports claim they tore their own flesh, screamed for hours, and begged for death. Eventually, they stopped sleeping, and stopped being human. Though some say the more extreme versions are fiction, declassified Soviet documents confirm experiments on sleep deprivation in extreme isolation were indeed conducted. While the worst may be urban myth, the real experiments still left people permanently scarred, mentally and physically. Flooding battlefields with engineered storms at number 5. Imagine a battlefield where the weather obeys military command. Welcome to Operation Popeye. During the Vietnam War, the US launched a top-secret program to modify weather over enemy territory. Using aircraft, they seeded clouds with silver iodide in hopes of extending the monsoon season and flooding enemy supply lines. For 5 years, they did just that, flooding roads, washing out supply routes, and displacing villages. It worked. But it also set a terrifying precedent. Weaponizing the weather became a new frontier, one that violated international treaties. When word leaked, the backlash was immediate. Lawmakers were furious, demanding accountability. The UN eventually banned environmental warfare, but the damage was done. Manipulating nature for combat had crossed a line, and the military had proved it could play God, at least temporarily. A real-life horror house in World War II at number 4, the chilling saga of Unit 731 in Japan. This wasn't just a failed experiment, it was a house of horrors. During World War II, the Imperial Japanese Army ran a secret research facility in Manchuria. There, scientists conducted unspeakable experiments on prisoners, men, women, and children. They froze limbs to study frostbite, exposed organs to chemical weapons, and even performed live dissections without anesthesia. Victims were infected with plague and cholera to test biological warfare. The unit killed tens of thousands. But here's the horrifying twist. After the war, the US secretly granted immunity to many of Unit 731's doctors in exchange for their research data. These war criminals were never prosecuted. Instead, they became professors and medical leaders in post-war Japan. Their legacy? A gruesome reminder of what unchecked military ambition can produce. Vanishing ships and sailors trapped in steel at number 3. Let's zoom back to the United States and dive into a surreal tale, the Philadelphia experiment. This one blurs the line between myth and reality. According to urban legend, in 1943, the US Navy conducted an experiment to render the USS Eldridge invisible to radar, and possibly to the human eye. The ship allegedly vanished, teleported, and then reappeared, with some sailors fused into the hull, others missing entirely, and a few driven mad. The Navy has denied everything, calling it a fabrication. But witnesses have insisted for decades that something very strange happened that day. Some point to secret electromagnetism research, Tesla coils, and quantum theories. Whether real or not, the story reflects very real fears of what happens when experimental physics collides with military ambition. Maybe it was a myth, or maybe it was a glimpse into technology we still don't understand. Nuclear testing turns paradise into poison. Crashing into number 2 is one of the most dangerous tests ever carried out on American soil, Operation Crossroads. In 1946, just after World War II, the US conducted nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll, detonating massive atomic bombs near a fleet of decommissioned warships. The goal? Study the effects of nuclear blasts on naval vessels. But what they got was an apocalyptic nightmare. The first test, Able, went as planned. The second, Baker, was underwater, and it created a radioactive tidal wave that contaminated every ship, the sea, and the island itself. Cleanup crews were exposed to deadly radiation, ships were so irradiated they had to be sunk, and Bikini became uninhabitable. The locals, promised a return home, never got it. Decades later, cancer rates among sailors and islanders skyrocketed. Operation Crossroads didn't just test bombs, it left a radioactive legacy still poisoning the Pacific today. And finally, the missile that could have ended the world. And finally, at number 1, the single most chilling military experiment gone wrong, Project Pluto. This was the Pentagon's plan for a nuclear-powered, supersonic, low-flying missile, codenamed SLAM, or supersonic low-altitude missile. Unlike traditional missiles, SLAM would cruise just above the ground at Mach 3, releasing hydrogen bombs along its path. But here's where it gets nightmarish. Because it was nuclear-powered, it didn't just drop bombs, it irradiated everything in its flight path. It would leave a trail of radioactive devastation, even if it didn't explode. The noise alone could shatter windows, and the reactor would spew deadly particles into the atmosphere. Testing began in the 1960s. Engineers actually built a working nuclear engine. But even they realized how uncontrollable this Frankenstein weapon was. There was no way to safely test it. If launched, it could turn the world into a wasteland. The project was finally cancelled. But just knowing how close we came to unleashing that horror is enough to keep anyone awake at night. From psychic spies and biological warfare to nuclear nightmares and ethical oblivion, these experiments prove that even the most advanced militaries can fall into the trap of ambition over reason. Every one of these projects began with an idea: to defend, to deter, to win. But in the end, they left scars, secrets, and sometimes bodies in their wake. What other secrets are still buried in government vaults? What experiments are happening right now that we'll only hear about decades later? Thanks for watching, and if your mind was blown at least once in this video, hit that like button, drop a comment with the most insane experiment you think went too far, and subscribe for more shocking stories the world tried to hide. Because around here, we uncover the truth, no matter how dark it gets. Stay curious, and a little paranoid. Until next time.